Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Surya Jayate. Om Hari Om. Namaste, everyone. It is absolutely my pleasure, my honor, my privilege to be here with you today. And once again, as you've seen, rather than meeting on Mondays, we're now meeting Sundays at 2 p.m. Central Time, what we like to call Vedic Heartland Time. And very, very happy that you are here with us. We can already see that there are many, many more people here today on Sunday versus on Monday. Sundays seem to be much better for people, and especially our people in Europe and other places throughout the world, Australia, India, Bangladesh, etc., etc. So again, welcome. It is absolutely wonderful that you're here with us. Before we begin, I want to thank our moderators because, of course, I always forget our moderators. They do such a good job, very quietly, very expertly, very stealthily in the background, that I tend to very sadly forget our moderators. We have the best moderators on earth, bar none, and I don't say that lightly at all, actually. There are individuals with major, let's say, news networks, etc., who are paid moderators who earn a salary. Our moderators are better than they are. So we have the best moderators on earth. So I thank them tremendously for all of the wonderful work that they do, in addition to all of our volunteers of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. As I think most people are aware, this isn't just some live stream. Rather, what this represents, this weekly satsanga that happens, is in actuality a movement. It represents a movement called the International Sanatana Dharma Society. And this movement could only exist and be as successful as it is, which it is now, with our moderators. It is only as a result of our moderators and our volunteers throughout the world that indeed we have as much success as we do. We have hundreds and hundreds of volunteers everywhere throughout the world, and I wish to officially thank them. Well, what we're going to be talking about today is actually a crucial topic, more than people know. And it actually involves not just Sanatana Dharma, quote-unquote Hinduism, which is not a term we use because it's a meaningless term that goes back just a few hundred years. But this is an important topic not just to those individuals who follow Vedic spirituality, but in actuality, by extension, it is an important philosophical problem that has come into being really only a few hundred years ago, really in full force, starting in the very, very early 1800s. So let's say roughly about 200 years ago or so is when this problem came into being. And what this problem is called is radical universalism. And that is the false, philosophically as stupid as anything can be idea, I'll just state that bluntly, that all religions are the same. Now, why do I use the S word stupid? Because if a person who upholds this idea that all religions are exactly the same, if you were to challenge them to say the same thing about anything else, all politics are the same. Oh, really? Okay, so it doesn't matter if you are a National Socialist, a Marxist-Leninist, a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, an anarchist, etc. All politics will lead to the same goal. again, anyone who would believe that, which is nobody, anyone who would believe that would be devoid of intelligence. And of course, we can use so many other examples where if a person were to say, all such and such is the same, it all leads to the same place. Oh, I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to try to travel from New York to California by car, but I'm not going to use GPS, I'm not going to use a map, I'm not even going to know which direction I'm going in or which road I'm traversing at any particular moment. Oh, I'll make it to California just as good as someone who's on a jet plane going directly from New York to California and who will be there in 2.5 hours. It's all the same. You see, anyone who would say such a thing about anything else, we would know that there's something wrong with the individual, either intellectually or indeed mentally, psychologically, there's something wrong with the person. And we would not want to be in a car with them on their way from New York to California. We would avoid being in the car with that person because we're never going to make it to California. Oh, maybe in 20 years by luck, sheer luck, when we're an old person with a beard down to here. But again, we would avoid being in a car with such an individual. In the same way, avoid being in a religious car with an individual who says all religions are the same, because they're not. Indeed, the religions themselves proclaim that they are not the same. So this idea of all religions being the same, that is what is called radical universalism. And indeed, as some people may know, I wrote a book that came out in 2007 called Radical Universalism. And I am in the midst of creating the second recension of this book. I am editing it, I am expanding it greatly, and the book hopefully will be available, let's say within maybe 6 weeks or so. My writing will be done in about a week, but then I hand it over to our volunteer team who do our book publications. So then the onus is upon them to get the book out as quickly as possible. But the book will be available, both the second edition, both in print form, but also in Kindle form as well. So again, give us maybe 6 weeks, more or less, something like that. And the brand new edition of this, at this point, legendary book, because the book has been read by so many people and important people that it's amazing, actually. This book will be available in approximately 6 weeks or so. But along the same lines of this book, what I am talking about now with this talk is, indeed, are God and the gods equal? So the same question, are they the same? You see, unfortunately, in Neo-Hindu circles, Neo-Hinduism indeed goes back around 200 years. And one of the foundations, the bedrocks of what, not just myself, academicians, scholars, any individuals who really, really have studied Vedic spirituality very in depth, what we call Neo-Hinduism is a very recent phenomenon. It is a break-off from pure and authentic, scripturally based Sanatana Dharma. It looks similar in some ways, but philosophically the foundations are in many ways the very opposite of pure Sanatana Dharma. And one of the foundations of Neo-Hinduism, again, which has been around approximately 200 years, give or take, is this idea of radical universalism, that all religions are the same, but then by extension, all the gods are the same, all objects of worship are the same, you see, which of course is simply an extension of radical universalism. In other words, the idea that, it doesn't matter which god or goddess you choose to worship, it's like picking your favorite flavor of ice cream. Literally. Literally. Some people like this ice cream, some people like that ice cream. And the idea is that, what Hinduism, quote unquote, teaches is that, it doesn't matter if you worship this god, this goddess, this demon, this ghost, this ancestor, this, find a rock in the street, this is my object of worship. Doesn't matter, because ultimately you end up in the same place. Now, of course, the faults with this very, very, very infantile idea are easy to see. And indeed, I have enumerated all of the problems with this way of thinking, indeed, in Radical Universalism in this book. But one of which is this, and really the most important of which is this. By saying, and I'll repeat this, it doesn't matter who or what you worship, oh, we all end up in the same place anyway. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. For the individual who says that, yes, for them it doesn't matter because they're going nowhere anyway. But why? They are attempting in a dishonest manner to take the power, to take the authority, to take the power of will and determination out of the hands of God and place it in their own sweaty little palms. That's the problem. Rather than understanding that, no, God has his standards, and we are to understand what are God's standards, we say, no, God's standards, it doesn't matter. My standards are the only thing that matter. So I like Rocky Road ice cream. I don't like chocolate. I don't like vanilla. I don't like this. I don't like that. So in other words, we are saying that I will create the God that my fancy chooses. That's the problem. This is called henotheism. There are several different technical terms for this, actually, where the idea is that the gods and goddesses are interchangeable. And, oh, it doesn't matter, pick one. Oh, Indra. Oh, I kind of like watching thunder in the middle of the night. Okay, Indra's God. Indra's God. Oh, wait, this goddess? Oh, this goddess is blonde. Oh, I like blondes. Oh, okay, this is God. And you see on and on and on like this. This is henotheism. And more, let me cut to the chase. Nowhere in the totality of the Vedic scriptures does it teach this. That you just choose the God you want. And it's all the same. And, quote, it doesn't matter, unquote. And I've had people try to debate me on this. Not only do they lose within approximately 90 seconds or so, but the reason why they lose is because none of them have actually studied the scriptures. You see, I have. I've read them all. And the individuals who indeed tend to be these radical universalists are individuals who, oh, maybe they read the Gospel of Ramakrishna in their youth. And that's about it. And they think that as a result, they now understand the Vedic scriptures. Maybe they read a nice little book by Deepak Chopra. And that's it. They haven't actually read the scriptures. I've challenged people again and again. In the Vedic scriptures, it does not say that all religions are the same and that it does not matter who you worship, you all end up in the same place. On the contrary, what we're going to do now is a very important exercise in spiritual development. And that is, we're going to look at the actual Vedic scriptures. What we're going to do is look at several verses from Bhagavad Gita, and there are quite a few, and trust me, not just Bhagavad Gita. Again, I wrote the book on this. I could have given you Vedic verses from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of various sources. But I chose to make this simple, and we're just going to stick to the Bhagavad Gita. And here you'll see we have a variety of verses. They are in the description of this video if you want to look at them. Where, who? No, not this New Age best-selling author, not this person, that person. God himself in the form of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, the actual avatar of Sriman Narayana, who came upon the earth approximately 5,200 years ago. And he tells us, he gives us the answer. Is it the case that God and the gods are equal? He gives us the answer. So all this being said, now let's dive into these verses. The first verse that we're going to look at is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, and this is verse 20. And Bhagavan Nuvacha, Lord Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, those whose minds are distorted by material desires surrender unto demigods, and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Very good. So by demigods, what are being spoken of is indeed the idea of these lesser beings. These beings who, in comparison to humans, they're very powerful. To the point where, for some individuals who, again, are not very spiritually mature, if you were to encounter one of these beings, you almost would think that you're in the presence of God. This is how magnificent they are, what virtue and nobility, etc., what light emanates from them. Indeed, the word deva itself means a being of light. But it's made clear again and again and again and again in the scriptures that of all these devas, number one, there's a variety of them. There are various strata of devas. They live for a very long time, but some live for 100,000 years. That's very short. Some live for 1,000,000 years. That's a little better. Some live for millions. Indeed, you have a Brahma who lives for trillions, and that's with a T, of years. Universes come and go, come and go. And a universe, an entire cycle of a universe coming into being and going out of being, that's one day for Brahma. And with all due respect, he's just a deva. He himself has full understanding that God is his source. So indeed, when we talk about the gods, we're talking about a myriad of beings. That is who is being spoken of here. So let's go through this very quickly, and we will try to go through this quickly because we have many verses to look at. Those whose minds are distorted by material desires surrender unto the demigods. This right here should end our talk because, again, I know the Sanskrit. Indeed, I'm translating Bhagavad Gita very slowly. My goal is to eventually have it fully translated. But I know the Sanskrit to this. This is absolutely correct. Indeed, this is all Prabhupada's translation. And his translation, it's going to be very difficult for me to provide a translation better than his. His translation is wonderful in every way. So this is quite correct. Those individuals who surrender to the demigods, so not just worship the demigods, but who surrender unto them, thinking that, oh yes, this being who lives for 1,000,000 years, 100,000 years, a few million, this is God. This is the source of all reality. Such individuals have minds that are distorted by material desire. Now, let's back up a little bit and let's speak about this. Is it wrong to worship the devas, to ask the devas for favor, to honor the devas, to honor the gods, to honor their virtue, to honor the fact that, oh yes, they have powers, to honor the fact that they are indeed sattvic beings, they are beings of goodness, etc.? No, absolutely not. It is good to worship them. Indeed, we worship the devas. Let me make this very clear. If you look at the totality of the four Veda Samhitas, indeed, there are many, 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 many hymns praising the devas. That's not by accident. We are meant to honor the gods and goddesses. The only difference being exactly what Krishna says here in his exact wording. We are to avoid surrendering unto them as if they are indeed God. That's the mistake. If we meet a governor, if some of you out there are lucky enough to meet a governor of a state, let's say, should you be respectful? Should you honor that person? Generally speaking, yes. Generally speaking. Now, this is aside from the question, oh, is he corrupt or not corrupt? No, we're talking very generally. If you meet a governor, oh, you should be respectful, at the very least. Is the governor God? No. No. So, indeed, we should be intelligent enough to know that when you meet a being who is more powerful, a lot more powerful than you, oh, you be respectful. You offer incense to that being. You offer your obeisances to that being, etc. And this is the only point. That being is not God. He's more powerful than you, but he's not the all-powerful. He is not the very source of power itself. So, when we find that such individuals indeed make this mistake and they are now worshiping a god or a goddess as God, as the absolute, the ultimate, the source of all reality, that from which all things proceed, etc., well, why would such a person do such a thing? It's because their mind, their intelligence is bewildered. And why? Because they have material desires. Because there's something that they desire materially. Doesn't matter how spiritual they claim to be. No, even subconsciously, they want something. They want something. They want something out of selfishness. Or out of selfishness and by extension for their family or for someone else. But it is not pure. By definition, worship of a god or goddess cannot be pure because you are not worshiping the source of all purity. You're not worshiping God. Very good. And now let's go on with this verse. And follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their service. Very good. So this just kind of sums up, what we were saying, that indeed, when an individual surrenders to a god or a goddess and follows all the particular rules and regulations of worship of that being, but making the mistake of thinking that, oh, this is actually the absolute, this is God, that person's mind is distorted. Let's go on now. And we will go on now to another verse, which is also chapter 7, but this is now verse 22. Endowed with such a faith, he seeks favors of a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. So indeed, Krishna cannot make this more clear. Let's go through this. First of all, endowed with such a faith, that is the faith, the mistaken faith that, oh yes, this god, this goddess who is a limited being, why are they a god or a goddess? See, we understand this in the most ancient layers of ancient spirituality, and specifically Vedic spirituality. Why is a being a god or a goddess to begin with? See, we know that even though they're called immortal, we know that they're not. We know that they can die. We know that they can engage in battle and be killed, etc. We know that their lifespan is limited. All the Vedic scriptures attest to this. How did they become a god or a goddess? Due to good karma. These were people who were human beings, who they acquired extremely good karma, and then it gets to the point where indeed they have that station. Now, with this understanding, endowed with such faith in a god or a goddess, he seeks favors of a particular demigod and obtains his desires. So again, getting back to what was said previously in the previous verse, why does a person indeed surrender to a god or a goddess? Just materialism. It's just a form of spiritual materialism. That's exactly what it is. So it's with the idea, indeed, that such an individual simply wants to benefit themselves. And Krishna says, oh, and they will. They will. But then he has the last sentence here. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. So again, Krishna cannot make this any clearer. That you may worship a demigod, a demigoddess, a god, a goddess, because you want some sort of benefit. Oh, please, oh, thou powerful being, give me money, give me a wife, give me a husband, give me this, give me that, give me good health, etc. In actuality, all benefits come from God alone. And they may, for that moment, be coming through a god or goddess, but it is not by the power of that god and goddess alone. Indeed, the powers that any god and goddess has comes directly from God. Now let's go on. Now we're going to look at the preceding verse, and this is chapter 7, verse 23. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme abode. So once again, Krishna could not make this any more clear. Let's go through this. First of all, who worship the demigods? Who worship the demigods? Again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All paths are the same. It doesn't matter who you worship. No, Krishna makes this quite clear and distinct. Who worship the demigods? Individuals who have small intelligence. Individuals who are not very philosophical, who are not very wise, who may otherwise be good people, but they have not reached the maximal degree of their intelligence and wisdom. Now let's go on. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods. And now this part is important, this next clause. And their fruits are limited and temporary. So indeed, will there be benefits from worshiping the gods and goddesses? Yes, there will be benefits, without doubt. But those benefits will indeed be limited and they will be temporary. So if you worship a limited god or goddess, it is not the case that you will have an infinite amount of auspicious things, of abundance, virtues, etc., etc. No, what you get from the gods, it will be limited. It will only be to a certain extent, but more importantly than even that, it will be temporary. Whatever boon a god or a goddess gives you, it's not going to last for all of eternity. Why? Because they don't last for all of eternity, because their power is limited, because they are not God. but rather it will be something temporary. Now let's go on. Now this next sentence is extremely important. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme abode, my supreme planet. So indeed, it does matter. It does matter, and the goals are not the same. The end result is not the same. Just like, again, you get on this street, you'll end up in one direction. You'll end up, you drive on this highway, you'll end up in a different place. You take this route, you'll end up someplace else entirely, etc. Roads are not the same. Avenues, streets, highways are not the same. It's not that, again, I want to go from New York to California. Let me just jump on any street, regardless of anything. Oh, and I'll end up in California. Not true. So now Krishna makes this very, very clear. If you worship the demigods, and by implication, any specific demigod, you will go to the abode, you will go to the state of that god, that goddess. Period. Not the highest. You're not going to go to Vaikuntha if you worship Kubera, etc. No. In accordance with the nature of that god or goddess, if you worship that god or goddess, that is where you will end up. But then, my devotees ultimately reach my supreme abode, my supreme planet. So this is something that is indeed extremely important to understand. That those individuals who worship God, who worship Vishnu, they end up with Vishnu, they end up with Krishna. So indeed, the end goal is not the same, and it does matter. Very good. Let's go on now to chapter 7 and verse 30. Those who know me as the Supreme Lord, as the governing principle of the material manifestation, who know me as the one underlying all the demigods, and as the one sustaining all sacrifice, can, with steadfast mind, understand and know me even at the time of death. Very good. It's amazing how almost sequentially, almost seems that the more we go into this verse, verse after verse after verse after verse, Krishna makes it clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer. So again, any individual who wants to claim to be a Hindu and has this idea, all the gods are interchangeable, worship whomever you wish, whoever you want, we all end up in the same place, just choose any god, any goddess, doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Krishna is telling you it matters. It matters. So let's go through this verse, because again, it is as clear as it can be. And the Sanskrit is correct. It is a correct translation. Again, I know the Sanskrit. Those who know me as the Supreme Lord. Now, Krishna is going to make this distinction between the gods and himself. He is now going to provide an ontological explanation for the nature of the Absolute, which is him. And this is what he does here. Those who know me as the Supreme Lord, and now he says, as the governing principle of material manifestation. As the governing principle. In other words, what does this mean? Oh, there's a lot of speculation as far as what even this one clause means. Quite a few people get it correctly, the honest people, but even those people don't fully understand exactly what's being said by this. God is the foundation of all reality, all material and spiritual reality, but now speaking very specifically of the material reality, God himself interpenetrates all of reality in the form of Om as the sustainer of all beings. This is what he is saying here. No other god, no other goddess, doesn't matter if you like the jewelry they wear, doesn't matter, they cannot say this. That quite literally, it is their very essence, their nature, interpenetrating all of reality that gives reality its sustaining power. No god, no goddess can say this. Only Krishna, i.e. Narayana, Vishnu, can say this. And he goes on. So those who know me as the Supreme Lord, as the governing principle of the material nature, who know me as the one underlying all the demigods. Now, let's stop here. Now, you'll see why I commented on that previous clause about God interpenetrating all reality and being the sustainer of all reality. Now, he is saying this specifically about the gods as well. he is saying, oh, the gods, the goddesses, oh, it's nice that you like them. Yes, they're good servants of mine. It makes me happy that you like my servants. But they exist because of me. They have power because of me. This is what he is saying here, that he is the one underlying all the demigods and the one sustaining all sacrifice. Every time you do a yajna, every time you do a homa, every time you do a puja, it doesn't matter who you do it to, actually, as long as it's a good being. In actuality, it is Lord Vishnu himself who is underlying, who is the very force, the very power of your ritual itself, and no one else. So such an individual can, with steadfast mind, I'll speak about this for just a moment. Indeed, this is the hallmark of a real manushya, a real human being. This is the very hallmark of what it means to be an individual who is spiritual. The other S word that's thrown around meaninglessly today, spiritual, this is spiritual, I'm spiritual, you're spiritual. It's all spiritual. Unless you have a steadfast mind, a mind quite literally like titanium that you are in full control over, you're not spiritual, and you can't claim to be spiritual. Indeed, if you do not have a steadfast mind, that's all right. Be sincere and work toward having a steadfast mind. But if you have the idea that your mind can be all over the place, and yet I'm a spiritual person, indeed, even though I have no control over my mind is just flitting here and there and here and there, I'm going to start my own YouTube channel and start blathering about spiritual this and that and twin flames, etc., all sorts of interesting, nonsensical statements. Stop. Shut down your YouTube channel, whatever else you have. Become a yogi. Start to meditate. No. Not pretend meditate. Really meditate, the way that the Vedic scriptures teach us. And gain a steadfast mind. Now, having that steadfast mind, being on a path, sincerely so, being on a path in which you can indeed achieve some sort of spiritual realization. Then, after many, many years, and when I say many years, I'm talking about a minimum of, let's say, 20 years, now you can in a very low-key way, maybe begin to share Sanatana Dharma, the teachings of spirituality, with others. But unless you have that steadfast mind, then you're not in a position, indeed, to pose yourself as a spiritual teacher. So this is crucial. We must have a steadfast mind. And such an individual with a steadfast mind, what is the conclusion, can understand and know me even at the time of death. Even at the time of death. At the time of death, doesn't matter what bravado a person pretends to have. Believe me, the greatest atheist who says, oh, I don't believe in God, I don't believe I'm going to survive death, when they are 3 minutes away from dying, they are scared to the point of mental paralysis. Doesn't matter what bravado they try to have. And why is this the case? Because this is the most intense time for a person, is when they're about to leave their body. And thus to think about God at that moment is nearly impossible unless you have cultivated that awareness of God for all of your life. And now finally at the time of death, peacefully, calmly, with steadfast mind, you can focus your awareness upon God and thus be with God. So this is why Krishna mentions this specifically. See, Krishna does not just mention things for no reason. Your favorite New Age, modern New Age author does mention things for no reason. They try to have a lot of filler. The Vedic scriptures don't have filler in any way. This is why Krishna mentions specifically, even at the time of death, an individual of steadfast mind who is my devotee will think of me and thus come unto me. Let's go on now. And now we're going to go to a different chapter, and this is chapter 9, verse 23 of Bhagavad Gita. Whatever a man may sacrifice to other gods, O son of Kunti, is really meant for me alone, and it is offered without true understanding. So again, Krishna cannot make it any clearer that whatever things an individual is offering to a lesser god or goddess, again, whatever it is, In ritual, there are many nice things that can be offered. You can offer food, you can offer water, you can offer light in the form of a lamp, you can offer incense, etc., etc. Well, what is Krishna saying here? Whatever a man may sacrifice to other gods, O son of Kunti, and that's Arjuna, is really meant for me alone. In other words, oh, what a shame. Again, it's good to honor the gods and goddesses. You see, again, I need to keep repeating this because people, unfortunately, today in 2023 tend to have minds that can only think one way or another, not nuanced in any way. No, we will always, always honor the gods and goddesses. Indeed, if you were to look here, you'll see that in our temple we have many, many wonderful murtis of Ganapati, for example. And indeed, he's one of the limited gods. He's not God. But indeed, we honor the gods and goddesses. But again, we also make that distinction. The governor comes and visits our temple, we'll be very respectful, but we don't mistake him for God. Indeed, forget about mistaking him for God. We don't mistake him for the President of the United States. See, it's not all one. It does matter. Governor is not a president. A president is not the dog catcher down the street. The dog catcher down the street is not the city councilman, etc., etc. They're all different stations, and we recognize all this. So, all that being said, what Krishna is saying here is that, indeed, when you are offering something to a god or to a goddess, in actuality, that is worship that should, by all rights, be given to God himself. And how sad is it that, indeed, we are praying to some limited being for some limited benefit, rather than praying to the ultimate for the ultimate benefit. So this is all that Krishna is saying. And to conclude this, what does he say? It is offered without true understanding. Again, when we mistake the gods, the goddesses for God, it is an offering without true understanding. And now, one of my favorite verses from Bhagavad Gita, and a very, very powerful verse, and this is chapter 9, verse 25, where again, as I keep saying, Krishna cannot make it more clear. Now he makes it extremely clear. So just to back up for a moment before we look at this verse. So what does Neo-Hinduism, what does Radical Universalism say? Worship any being you want, and what's their mantra? It doesn't matter. We all end up in the same place anyway. Worship a ghost, worship a demon, worship this god, that god, it's a Gandharva, an Apsara. Worship whoever you wish. Worship one of the avatars? Oh, sure. Oh, it doesn't matter. The avatars are no better than a ghost, than anything else. Well, what does Krishna say to this? Here we go. Krishna says the following. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. Those who worship ancestors go to Pitraloka, to the ancestors. And those who worship me will live with me. So one of the mantras of Neo-Hinduism, it doesn't matter. What is, one could say, not only the retort, not only the response, not only, let's say, the counter mantra of authentic Sanatana Dharma, very simply this. It does matter. And Krishna says so. So indeed, if one worships a demigod, then you will become like unto that demigod. Whatever is the nature, the state of that demigod, you will become like unto that. You will go to that realm of that specific being you're worshiping. If indeed you are someone who you are very tamasic and you worship ghosts and spirits. Oh, and there are many people who do. There are people who do seances, there are mediums, there's the spiritism in the Western world, in America specifically, that began, the 2 centuries ago at this point, in the 1800s. Well, if you worship ghosts and spirits, then indeed that will be your destiny, is that you will live among the ghosts and spirits. Not a very good place to live. If you worship the ancestors, then you will go to the realm of the ancestors. And then finally Krishna says, and those who worship me will live with me. And what does that mean? What is the source origin of Krishna? It is Vaikuntha. It is indeed the eternal spiritual realm. If you become a devotee of Krishna, of Vishnu, of Narayana, then no, you don't become a ghost. No, you don't live with some limited god or goddess, this deva, this devi. No, you don't live with your ancestors. Rather, if you worship Vishnu Tattva, if you worship Krishna, you will live in the spiritual realm of Vaikuntha, and you will do so not until your quote-unquote karma runs out, but eternally. You have now transcended karma altogether, and now you are living in a realm of pure devotion. Very good. And then finally, the very last verse that actually we have 2 more verses to look at. Very good. So the next verse that we're going to look at is indeed Bhagavad Gita, and this is now chapter 10, verse 2. And Krishna proceeds in this way. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know of my origin, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and the sages. Again, it's fascinating. As someone who, I don't know how many times I've read Bhagavad Gita, 50, 60, 100, I'm not sure. I lost count a long time ago. I lost count probably 30 years ago, something like that. It's amazing how, as you proceed through the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes it clearer, 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 until he finally has his beautiful lotus palms on either side of your head, holding you, and his nose almost touching you and saying, "Do you understand now?" So let's look at this verse. Neither the hosts of demigods, in other words, all the demigods, regardless of the echelon that they find themselves on, nor the great sages know my origin. So what does he mean by this? He doesn't mean this literally in a sequential temporal way, because of course Krishna transcends the temporal. What he means is that indeed any person, you can trace their history, even a god, even a goddess. Indeed, in many of the Vedic scriptures, it will say, oh yes, this god is the son, the daughter of these gods. You see, they're temporary. They come into being, they're here, they go out of being. This is true for sages as well, whether it's the great Upanishadic rishis, whether it's yogis, any sort of great acharya, etc. We know they were born here, they passed away, they left the world here, etc. But Krishna is saying, unlike any other being, whether they are a great sage, whether they are a god, no one knows my origin. In other words, he truly is the source of all reality. And then, and again, confirming what I just said, he says, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and the sages. So indeed, he is the source of all other beings. He is the source of everything, material and spiritual. Let's go on now indeed to the last verse that we're going to look at. And this is chapter 17 now, so deep into Bhagavad Gita, and verse 4. Men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods. Those in the mode of passion worship the demons, and those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. Very nice. There are several reasons why I wanted to end with this verse. First and foremost is indeed to reiterate that as followers of Vedic culture, as followers of Sanatana Dharma, we do indeed honor the gods and goddesses. So Krishna here is saying, he's talking about the 3 gunas, the 3 modes of materialism, of matter. And what he is saying here is that indeed individuals who are sattvic, who are in the mode of goodness, they do indeed worship the demigods. But then by extension, he talks about how, individuals who are rajasic, who are in the mode of passion and energy, etc., they worship demons, which is very true. Actually, this is why you have political activists who are very passionate people who they worship the politician who they're following, etc. So they're worshiping demonic beings. And then those individuals who are in ignorance, who are in tamoguna, they worship indeed ghosts and spirits. So indeed we need to keep this in mind, that these forms of worship, once again, Krishna is making this clear, These different forms of worship are different. They're not the same. They're not equal. They are different. But more, looking at the highest echelon of the three modes of material nature, material energy, he says those individuals who are sattvic, who are good, they do indeed worship the gods. And indeed, I need to make this very clear because, there are some individuals who, in understanding that God and the gods are not equal, they're not the same, that God is the source of all other gods, there are some individuals who also are small-minded who will take this too far and they say, we are not to even look at the gods and goddesses. It's God alone, God, and they become kind of Abrahamists in this sense, and yet they claim to be either Vaishnavas or Hindus, followers of Sanatana Dharma. No, we're not meant to go to that extent either. We are to, again, acknowledge. See, if we acknowledge, there is a president of the United States, does that mean every lesser politician doesn't exist and we don't honor them? You see, again, we can understand this in day-to-day life, and yet so many people, when it comes to understanding these various echelons of ontological being that exist with all the gods and then ultimately God, they're so confused, and there's no reason for it. Indeed, we honor all sattvic, powerful sattvic beings. We honor them, we worship them, we offer incense unto them, etc., on the one hand, but on the other hand, we understand that God himself and the worship of God is not sattvic. It's not rajasic. It's not tamasic. It is shuddha sattva. By technical definition, it is that which is the purest of goodness, transcendent goodness. So indeed, when it comes to worshiping the gods and goddesses, that is a sattvic activity, but sattva is a material activity. Even sattva, even goodness, is a material activity. When, however, it comes to worshiping God, we are now talking about being in a state that is the worshiper, being in a state that is beyond all three gunas, triguna, that is beyond all three gunas. And that is now what is technically called throughout the Vedic scriptures, shuddha sattva, pure goodness. So indeed, it is in worshiping God, to use the common English parlance, really what is Sriman Narayana, is in worshiping the Absolute, that we do so with a mentality of pure goodness, transcendental goodness. So indeed, are the gods and goddesses equal to God? The answer, according to Krishna, and again, he couldn't make it clearer other than grabbing you by your head and shaking you and telling you with an inch away from your face, the answer is no. Krishna tells us this. Again, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other verses throughout the rest of the Vedic scriptures, not just Bhagavad Gita, that tell us the same thing. They're all different. Just like the dog catcher is not the city councilman. The city councilman is not a person who represents our county. That person is not the mayor. The mayor is not a state senator. The state senator is not the governor. The governor is not the vice president. The vice president is not the president. We do have the intelligence to see this, I hope, correct? I know you do. I know you do. And yet when it comes to all these various beings that we find in Sanatana Dharma, we want to pretend that we're stupid. They're all the same. No, they're not. Just like the governor is not the president is not a dog catcher. They're not equal. Very good. So with that, namaste. I thank you for listening to my discourse. And with that, let me signal that we do indeed have a little bit of time, actually. It actually amazes me. I'm looking at the time. Something miraculous happened. I went through, I don't know how many verses, 8, 9, 10 verses, and we actually have about 9 minutes left over for questions and answers. So with that, if there are any questions and answers, now please is the time to feel free to ask those. Let me just say first, Kaana Tonga, Cassandra Siriganda. Thank you very much for your wonderful comments. I'm very happy that you're here. I don't recognize your name, so maybe it's your first time here. I don't know. But thank you very much for being here, and it's my pleasure to serve you. Good. Here is a good question from Raja Rama, from Sri Ram Varadarajan. And it is, Namaste Acharyaji, please accept my obeisances. How do I get rid of impatience in my sadhana as well as my normal daily work activities? I have the answer for you. Let me apologize in advance. It is an answer that you've heard before, but it is the answer to this, actually. It is the number one answer for precisely this problem that you're experiencing, which is a problem that many people experience. Indeed, many people, when they're doing their sadhana, they become impatient. And like you said, even in their daily work activity, etc., they become impatient. It is through satsanga. It is through associating with other individuals who are on the path that really you do both, but especially when it comes to spiritual impatience, that is impatience with your sadhana. But then by extension, and we'll get to there, also even in your daily life and even daily work. But let me back up, let me explain why this is the case, that satsanga, associating with other devotees, is so important. It is because when we are on a serious spiritual path, we're doing sadhana every day, etc., the more we associate closely with other people who are also doing the same thing, they're also doing their sadhana. First of all, we now have a gauge by which we can understand, all right, am I really progressing slowly, or is it indeed just impatience on my part? That's the first thing. You have that gauge. The other thing is you have added inspiration, because now you have other people you can speak to, and many of them will privately say to you, oh yes, I'm also kind of impatient. I wish I could make much more spiritual advancement much more quickly, etc. But more, their association also encourages you to continue to make rapid advancement spiritually. So indeed, this is why associating with other devotees is of such importance. This is why, if a person wants to feel like they are making such slow spiritual progress that it feels like they're going through quicksand, do your sadhana in absolute isolation. You will feel like you are barely even moving. Versus being surrounded by devotees. And of course, today we understand what that means. We can't always physically be surrounded by devotees, but however, we need to have that association through our Discord server, etc. So I would seek this, and then also this helps even with your daily life. So you were saying even in your daily work activities, you become impatient. Well, of course, the way that you get rid of this impatience is that you build the patience. And how do you build patience? You focus all of your awareness on the eternal, not the temporal. See, with the temporal, that is that which exists within time itself, well, time is a tricky thing. When you're unhappy, time will seem to go slow again, like you're traversing quicksand. When you're extremely happy, having a fun time, where did the last 4 hours go? It seemed like it was 10 minutes, etc. So this is why we are to always, always approach things from the perspective of the eternal. And that being the case, we will learn patience. So this is why I would counsel you. Very good. Bishwajit is here. Namaste, Bishwajit, from the UK. Wonderful to see you here. Nice. Here is a very nice question, actually, from Krishna's flute. Dandavat Maharaj, Dandavats to you as well. What happens if a disciple of a bona fide guru, I'm glad you added that, a bona fide, a true guru, not just anyone, passes away before this disciple achieves liberation? Does he receive the guru's guidance in the next life? Jaya Shri Guru. The answer is yes, but now let me go a little bit deeper into the actual mechanics of how this works. So indeed, we know that Krishna also explains to us in the Bhagavad Gita that if a person is a sadhaka, is a yogi, is someone who is seriously on the spiritual path, practicing every day, but then, oh, something happens. As you said, maybe they pass away before they achieve liberation, or maybe they even fall from the path. Oh, they were a serious yogi for 5 years, 10 years. Oh, but then something happens and they decide, oh, let me live kind of a normal life from now on. Well, Krishna assures us that in their next life, that person starts off again from where they left off. It's not that, oh, that 5 or 10 years of being a yogi, oh, it was all for nothing now. No, again, that's Abrahamism. That's silly. That's a silly idea. No, let's say you practice seriously, serious meditation, yoga, devotion, etc. for 10 years. But then for one reason or another, again, you kind of stray from the path a little bit. You don't become an evil person, but no, you know, have a somewhat more material life, and spirituality is now a little bit in the background. When you pass away, whatever was the height of progress that you made in that life, now in your next life, you start from there. Now, by implication, what does this mean? Well, if you're going to continue with the spiritual path now in your future lifetime, this means you must have a guru. So indeed, you will have a guru. You will have the proper guru. If you had a bona fide guru in lifetime A, you will have a bona fide guru in lifetime B, because you've already shown that you're worthy of a bona fide guru. Now, the question is, will that guru indeed be the exact same person who taught you? Maybe yes, maybe no, depending on the situation. Because the guru has a life as well. The guru, you know, is an individual who achieved spiritual enlightenment in that lifetime, and you know, they do have a right, if they wish, to then go on and be in Vaikuntha themselves. In some cases, they choose to stay. But then also in other cases, in lifetime B, it might be someone else who you didn't quite know, who then appears in your life as the guru. And this is the important thing, how you end this. Jaya Shri Guru. You see, this is what is called Shri Guru Tattva. And that is that, indeed, you may have a relationship with the exact same person. Indeed, lifetime after lifetime. That is a possibility, but more importantly, there is Shri Guru Tattva, the principle of Shri Guru. So even if it's not that exact same person, it's someone like unto that person, at the very least. So you still have that bona fide guru. So I hope that answers the question. Interesting. Here's a very, very practical, good question from Marius. It's so practical that I don't believe I've ever actually had this question. And it's from Marius G.I. Namaste Acharyaji, thank you for sharing your wisdom and for teaching Dharma. Absolutely my pleasure. I am currently sick, suffering from a cold, and I heard one should not do sadhana while sick. Is this true? It's not true, actually. However, if one is ill, then you do indeed, depending upon how ill you are, you have an excuse if you cannot do your sadhana to take a break. Indeed, this is one of the few excuses. You know, a person should do their sadhana every day. But if a person is ill to the point where, oh, you're debilitated, you're literally kind of lying in bed sweating and half delirious, at that point, oh, don't do your sadhana. Rest, rest, rest as much as you can. You know, so of course, if you're ill to the point where, oh, it's just a little cold, it's not so bad, you know, you're kind of feeling a little bit off, but you can still make it to work. Oh, if you can make it to work, you probably can do your sadhana. So yes, if it's an illness that's not too strong, then you should try to continue doing your sadhana. But if it's an illness where, again, you know, you have to stay home and you truly feel like you're on death's door, etc., then no, at that point, just rest. Don't worry about doing your sadhana. Indeed, this is one of the few excuses for not doing. So indeed, and of course, it's up to the individual to determine that. So indeed, if you feel ill to the point where you can't do your sadhana, don't feel bad. The important thing is that as soon as you feel better, you resume. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. Sandra G says, I was very confused on this topic. This clarity is amazing to have. Thank you, dear Guruji. Absolutely my pleasure. And indeed, this is why I gave this talk, is because you're not the only person who has been confused about this. Again, keep in mind, please, that I have been, let's say, I'm going to use modern terminology. I have been in this scene that is the Vedic, yogic, dharmic, spiritual, truly spiritual scene for 50 years. And I've seen it all. And I've known hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of individuals who are extremely confused about this very simple topic. Okay. We look at quote unquote Hinduism, Wikipedia style Hinduism, and what do we see? All these gods and goddesses, and it's all so confusing. So what does it all mean? What does it all mean? And people will come to nonsensical conclusions. Oh, they're all the same. They're all the same. Or people will come to an even just as equally bad conclusion, and that is they're all meaningless. None of them exists. Oh, these are all just mythical symbols of inner psychological states and Jungian nonsense like this, but they're confused. People are very confused about this. Well, again, it's easier to understand than people think. Indeed, for those individuals, for example, who were raised Christian, oh, you should be able to understand this. You don't understand the difference between God and an angel? Really? You were raised Christian, and of course you understand that, oh, there's God, but there are myriad of millions of angels and archangels and all these various beings. Indeed, I, of course, am not Christian. I'm not an Abrahamist. But it's amazing to me how even Christianity was so much better, or let's say 1,000 years ago, than it is now. Because if you look at, let's say, medieval Christianity, it was very similar to Vedic spirituality in that they had echelons of angels and all sorts of divine beings until you finally reach God. Oh, it was a beautiful hierarchical system. We're talking about traditional Christianity. So even they understood this, actually, interestingly. But then when it comes to a lot of people who are trying to follow Sanatana Dharma, they're so confused. Well, it's similar. The gods and goddesses, they're kind of equivalent to the angels of Christianity. They're powerful. We are to honor them, but they're not God. They're servants of God. So indeed, this is how we are to understand this, because I say it? No, because Krishna says it. Because the Vedic scriptures say it. Because all of the bona fide acharyas of the past have said it. Because this was the understanding of the totality of the Vedic tradition. The totality of the Vedic tradition up until about 200 years ago. So indeed, thank you, Sandra, for that very, very wonderful comment. Very good. I may just take one more question because we're already a little bit over time. Very good. I will answer this question because I can answer this quickly, and then I'll debate with myself whether I want to maybe take one more involved question after this. And this is from the Swede. Namaste Acharya. I have heard that eating garlic and mushrooms is not allowed in the Vedic tradition. Could you please explain why? That is untrue. That is untrue, actually. In fact, it's three things: garlic, onions, and mushroom, actually. It's not that they are not allowed. You see, there's not some religious stricture saying that, oh, it is unethical, it is immoral, it will harm us spiritually, it is something that is a sin to eat onions, garlic, and mushrooms. That is not true. Rather, for individuals who indeed choose to be very serious yogis, they are avoided, and they're avoided for very, very, very practical reasons, and that is that they are rajasic and tamasic. So this being the case, if a person wants to especially work on increasing the sattvic qualities of their life as much as possible, you try to live your life as sattvically as possible. So indeed, if a person wants to be as sattvic as possible, you avoid these things. But it's not that, again, it's not that it's a sin to eat these things. That's not true. And unfortunately, some people make a mistake between the two, avoiding X thing versus it being a sin against our religion to do X thing. And there's a massive difference. There's a very, very big difference. It's kind of like, living in a city versus living in a rural area. Is it a sin To live in a city, no. But if you want to be spiritual, better to live in a rural area. Well, the same thing with onions, garlic, and mushrooms. So, very good. I'll see if maybe there's one more question that I can answer somewhat quickly. If I'm skipping your questions, it's only because I can't answer it quickly. So please don't take offense in any way. Please give me a moment as I read through these. Very good. Again, sadly, most of these questions will take about 10 minutes to answer. I'm looking for something I can answer in about a minute and a half or so. Very nice. All right, here is a nice question that I can answer quickly, and it actually has to do precisely with what we were talking about with this talk. And this is from Blue Suzaku. Namaste, Sri Acharyaji. When one offers prayers, obeisances, and other gifts to Sriman Narayana, do those respect, honor, and satiate the devas by proxy, like watering the roots of a tree? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Indeed, Krishna himself, or at least the Srimad Bhagavatam itself, actually does indeed say this. It gives this exact example. For individuals who are conversant with the Vedic scriptures, who are followers of Prabhupada, other great acharyas, we have actually heard this example given many, many times. That God is like the root of the tree. All other beings are like the leaves, the twigs, the branches, etc. of the tree. And if you want all beings to benefit, you take water, you put it at the very root of the tree. In the same way, indeed, when we offer directly to God, then in actuality, all the lesser gods and goddesses also are satiated. So, indeed, this is one more reason why it is important to always recognize the difference between God on the one hand, gods and goddesses on the other. While we respect all of the above, we don't see them as the same. They're not equal. No one, nothing in this material world is equal. Equality is a myth. So we understand that they're different, but at the same time, we honor them all. We honor the gods and goddesses. We honor God, but we understand that it is in going to the source, going to the root, that indeed all beings are benefited, including the gods and goddesses. So this is why we offer our obeisances first and foremost at the feet of Sriman Narayana and of all of his avatars, such as Bhagavan Sri Krishna, Rama, Kalki, etc., etc. So with that, I will end here because we're a few minutes over time. Thank you again, all of you, very much for being here with us. As always these days, we have many devotees who are here with us in the temple right now. So there's a live audience here, in addition to all of you watching via live stream. And let me just say a few things. First of all, if you are new here, please visit our website, dharmacentral.com. And you will find much more information that is there, including our books that are available that go infinitely more in depth into the philosophy and practice of Sanatana Dharma than we can with any one live stream. You'll find many, many other resources that are there to increase your knowledge of Sanatana Dharma. Also, if you feel so inclined, please join our Discord server. And the link I know is in the chat. When you join our Discord server, what you're going to find are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of devotees specifically and exclusively of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. That is the movement that I am honored and privileged and humbled to lead. And indeed, you will find the greatest resource there, especially on Discord. If you go to our Discord server, you'll find fellowship with the most wonderful, most loving, most giving people on the face of the earth. And you will find a place where, regardless of where you are on the planet, there is discussion and philosophical discussions, questions being answered on Sanatana Dharma 24 hours a day. So please join our Discord server. So again, please join us again next Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Time, for our next live stream. From now on, our live streams will be every single Sunday, not Mondays anymore, but Sunday at 2 p.m. And I look forward to seeing you then, next Sunday. With that, Namaste. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Suryavansha Jayate. May Dharma be ever victorious. Evam Bhavatu. May it be so. And with that, everyone, between now and the next time that we get together, I ask you all that in every way you please take very good care of yourselves.